It's like imagine translating camarón que solo me se lo lleva la corriente. You know what I mean? How shrimp that falls asleep.
Pull that out of nowhere.
Shrimp that falls asleep.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are here for Charlitas episode 2. To get us started, let's view a fun fact about each of us. I'll start. My BTS bias is Yoongi. I'm an Edward Cullen fan.
One of my favorite soccer players has returned home. CH14.
I love movies.
And I love giraffes, like #obsessed. Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this has been another episode.
What about butterflies?
What?
What about butterflies?
Am I obsessed with butterflies?
No. Never mind.
No. Okay, so for today's episode, Luis, what are we going to talk about?
The theme of today's episode, or the topic, is translators.
Does anyone know what a translator is? Do you need a certificate for it? Is it like what exactly do you need for it? Does anyone know?
No. Should we have studied?
We have studied. Probably. I do not, but hold on. I wanted to bring something up because when I was doing my minor in Spanish, I didn't know that there was a difference between interpreter and translator. So according to that's what it is. Right. But so according to Google, an interpreter is a person who interprets, especially one who translates speech orally. And then a translator, or to translate, is to express the sense of words or text in another language.
So one of them's like the technique, the other one's like the person.
The way I viewed it was, or I guess how my professor explained it was, an interpreter you're going to be doing obviously like orally, right? And then a translator is Word documents type of thing. That's how I got it explained that, but I mean, it's Google, right?
I've always used those words
Interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I got confused when they're like, it's actually two different things. I was like, well, what do I know?
Whichever one comes to mind first.
True. I don't know about y'all, but because I speak Spanish and we all speak Spanish here, I have always thought that being like an interpreter or translator is like a career choice or a good choice. Do y'all relate on that too?
I think my brother did.
Well, that was one of the few reasons why I decided to get my minor in Spanish, because I was like, when I would go to appointments with my mom, we would sometimes request an interpreter, right? And sometimes they would share their experience. They're like, oh yeah, well, this is my job and I get paid very well. And I was like, well, I grew up speaking both English and Spanish, having to translate and interpret for my parents. So I was like, maybe I can make a career choice out of this. But it's been really difficult because it brought a lot of anxiety to me growing up.
Why is that?
Because little background story about myself. I arrived when I was 5 years old, and both my parents only speak Spanish. So I had to learn the language, English. And with that, because I was the only one learning English, it had to come down to me to speak and translate those documents for my parents. Or when we would even go to the store, something minimal, right? They'd be like, ¿Qué dice acá? What does that say? I'm like, girl, I don't know. And so that just brought anxiety to me, and speaking to adults. Growing up adults, right? How am I supposed to talk with them? I was 5 years old. So that's how the anxiety brought in. And that's why I was like, maybe I don't belong as it. I wouldn't make a good interpreter because I would just blank out and not have the person say. So there's still gray area where I'm like, maybe I should be a translator, interpreter, because now I've had the
Experience?
the resources, experience to further that. But that's my experience with that.
Luis, do you share a similar experience?
I do. Well, I came a little bit later into the U.S. I was 10 when I arrived. When me and my brother arrived over here. So, and younger siblings. as a younger sibling, I didn't really take like a lot of the load when it came to like that translating part.
We were like benched.
I was sub. I was a
You were
sub.
sub.
I was like sub translator. So I know that my brother like probably did a lot more with that than I did. But I mean, even when I was doing it, and I mean, even like, I don't really, there was never really any need to ever translate when I was a kid, obviously, because like we spoke only Spanish. But like over here, like I was a little bit older, and I don't know, once I learned like the language, like I don't know if I ever got like, I mean, maybe I did get some anxiety sometimes, like reading some like documents and stuff like that, especially like, when your parents, like you want to make sure that you're telling them the right information and stuff. But like, even as a middle schooler, like it's hard to understand some of the documents like that you're being given, like, you know what I mean? Like we were saying like earlier, talking about it, we were like, if it has like a picture of like Washington State on like the letter, it's a wrap.
It's a big gulp.
It's a big gulp. And then it's like also your parents want to know what it's saying, right? And they're like, are you sure that's what it's saying? And then it gets like that, and you're like, am I sure that that's what it's saying? So I guess in that end, like yeah, it can get. I would get a little bit nervous, but just I don't know. Just, yeah, that was it.
I want to bring light to the fact that we weren't just or like, at least in my case, I wasn't just translating like advertisements or like newspapers. Like it was important documents. It was like taxes. It was like medical papers. So it was, to me, I got a lot of anxiety from it. I was the second born. So like Luis mentioned, I feel like the load of translating didn't fall onto me as much as my older sibling. And so I 100% look up to her because she did all that by herself and she went through that. But at times it would turn to me to translate some stuff, and I would panic so bad because of like my mentality that if I don't translate this right, like this could cause a big problem because again, they're big documents. Like if you translate one word wrong, you could like be doing tax fraud or something like that. And so ever since I was little, I had that fear of mistranslating something, and so it became a fear of just talking to adults. And so growing up, even like ordering from fast food restaurants, like I would get so much anxiety because my mom would be like, dile que quiero esto. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And then she would hit me with the, entonces, ¿para qué vas a la escuela? They always hit us with
¿Para qué te sirve saber inglés if you don't use it?
It's like, girl, they don't tell me these medical terms. We don't learn this in English in school. Like, what are you on? Obviously, I didn't say that. I did not want to get in trouble. But yeah, that's my experience with translating. And to this day, I feel like I still struggle with anxiety. But yeah, like that's my experience. So
I know for me, I think my social anxiety stems from that too. Like I get so scared, like having to go order at a food place, and I'm literally just ordering a drink and fries. But I'm so scared of like talking to them because I was always, I'm the older sibling. So I would always order not just for myself, but for a family of 5. Or if I went to the doctors or whatever, I'm the bridge between my parent and the professional. And I'm not a very stable bridge, okay? I didn't know, especially because I have a really hard time, because language is so difficult. So I have a really tough time with like processing sometimes, and it takes a while. Or I just mix up words, or like my mom would be like, si no sabes inglés, digo, si sabes inglés y no lo quieres usar, like, estás tonta. Because if I knew English, I'd be like yapping forever and ever. And I'm like, okay, well, that's you, Mom, not me. I don't want to talk. Yeah. You've made me talk a lot. Or always having to be the face between whatever your parents say, whether it was good or bad. And sometimes it was bad. And it makes you feel bad. Like it makes you feel terrible, especially if you're so young. Like I know this is very common for us, in the Latino community, but in other communities too, where English is not the first language. And you have to go to school, and there you have to be the bridge. You have to, like, during conferences, if your teacher doesn't know Spanish or English, they get an interpreter, but sometimes, like, those interpreters lack the cultural awareness. And so then it's up to you to, like, clarify, or, like, actually, this is what my teacher meant, or whatever. It's just not a very good thing. I recently saw a TikTok of a librarian who was talking with a parent and a student, and the student came up, and he was, like, translating for his mom. He was interpreting for his mom, and he was like, hey, my mom wants to know this and that. And the librarian was like, stop. You're a kid, and I'm going to go let you do kid stuff. I will work it out with your parent via, like, a translating app. And, the point of his TikTok was to be like, let kids be kids and let the adults figure it out. And I'm an adult, and I can figure out how to communicate with another adult, even with a language barrier, especially in a world today where there are so many resources, like translating apps. But we know that translating apps sometimes aren't also 100% good. And then there's that whole big component of cultural awareness that some people can't really communicate even if they know the same language.
Something that you brought up was, you're that bridge between that professional and your parent, but you're a kid. Like, that professional went to school and learned all this, and you're just a kid. And is that really okay for kids to be undergoing that pressure of, like, I always thought about that as well. And it's like, I understand wanting to be there for your parent and taking on that burden, but at the same time, like, it's not healthy. It really isn't. It brings down a lot of pressure towards you, and sometimes a little resentment towards your parents because they made you go through those situationships.
And I don't know about you, Luis, but could you tell Jair, with, like, your older siblings that they felt that way and they kind of, like, projected that out? Or
For my brother, I don't know if he has ever projected it out, but, like, I remember him, like what you mentioned, like, translating when you were little. Like, I remember my brother couldn't even reach the counter to talk to, like, or he could barely reach the counter to talk to, like, people at the DMV or, like, grocery stores and all that. But even to this day, he still, like, helps out, like, my cousins, my uncles. Like, he's always has helped, like, family members and, like, friends to, like, translate, especially at the DMV. But sometimes depending on the situation, he feels like, oh, like, this is a lot of work. But other times, like, he's like, who else do they have?
What about you, Luis?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, same thing with my brother. I don't think he's ever like said he was, like, upset about it or anything. Like, I think he's just very much like I mean, like how you're saying, like, who else is gonna do it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know from my experience, like, I feel the same way. Like, I've never felt like as much as like if anything, like, especially when I was younger, like, it would be like, if my mom needed to go to the doctor or something, or if my mom needed to go to, like, the DMV, like you're saying, like, DMV, or like talk to, like, a lawyer about something, or, like, just do anything, like, that involved, like, a long conversation. Like, I know in my head I would be like I have to go, even if it's not like
It's not really like a question.
I know, but, like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, if she spoke the, like, you know what I'm saying, like, she could, like, she wouldn't even need me for any of that stuff. But like it's kind of like I have to go, even though it's not something that's really what's it called? It's not even like, if she knew the language, it wouldn't be any of my business, I guess, to know. And in, like, being, like, a kid, I guess, like, being, like, a little, like, I don't know, little brat, sometimes I'd be like, oh, like, why do I gotta go? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to do something else. Like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to, you know what I mean? But then again, it's like that. Then I would feel bad and be like, I'm just gonna leave her to fend for herself, like, in a situation where, like, it's like, I don't know. I think of, like, the way I would think about it was like, if I'm getting annoyed about it, like imagine how she's gonna feel like talking to somebody that she just doesn't. And I mean, and like you're saying, like even to this day, like we're still doing that stuff, like we're still translating. Like the other day, my brother showed me like a text from one of my aunts, that she texted him just to thank him for translating. She was like, "I'm sorry, my English is trash. Like I'm really trying here, but just thank you." And my brother showed me that, and he felt that one. He felt that one, and I guess that was the first time he's probably showed me something that, like regarding this topic of translating. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like it's difficult, but that it's another I guess it's just another aspect of it about who else would do it if not us.
And I think that's like the unfortunate part, like because like Pamela was saying, like that's such a huge pressure.
Yeah.
Such a huge expectation to be put on a very like a 7-8-year-old, because I know I was translating at that age. I was translating even younger. The second I learned English, I was the first interpreter, the first translator for my family. And it sucks that places, like the DMV or wherever else doesn't have the appropriate or the accessible resources for people whose first language isn't English. Because I also feel that, like, if not me, then who else will help them?
Yeah.
But at the same time, and it's like, well, why me?
Yeah,
why?
But yeah.
Because then we loop back to what we were talking about, like our very first, like, I don't have that certificate. I haven't been trained for it. I don't even know what these medical terms mean. Yeah.
A lot of times it's like, and you're going to DMV, or like it's like usually a government. It's like usually like something that has like words that you like, even if like, I think I speak Spanish pretty well, like both languages really well. Sometimes I don't understand what the word even means in English. And I'm like, I don't even know what this means anyway, in either language. You know what I mean? So it's hard.
I remember like going to like my dad's hospital visits, like clinics. I would just like point to the body parts.
I know my brothers, because the oldest, right? So it would usually follow me. But if I wasn't there, then it would be my second brother. Rarely ever my youngest brother.
Yeah.
Rarely ever. But I know now my middle brother gets on my younger brother's head for not knowing enough Spanish or not knowing enough English. So he can't win either way. But he always circles it back to like, well, because you were never there to help mom or dad. Because you never needed to help mom or dad. That's why you don't know good Spanish. That's why you're a no sabo. That's why you don't know good English. That's why you say wrong words all the time, because you never had to do that. And I'm like, lucky him. I wish I never had to do that, because now look at me. I can't even talk to a person without freaking out.
Yeah.
I was hearing your story, right? And literally a couple days ago, we were in the kitchen, my family and I, and my mom started telling us a story how she had to go to the store, and Bam and I weren't there, so we couldn't go with her. And my little brother went. Mind you, between him and I, there's an 8-year age gap. And he's like, he told her, why do I have to go, right? Why can't you go by yourself? And my mom was like, well, just come with me. And like, and just in case, like, what if someone talks to me and I can't speak to them? And then she was like, my little brother is like, well, yeah, but like, you can try to do it by yourself. You don't need me there. You don't always have to rely on them both. And when she was telling that, I was like, speechless, because I was like,
would never have said that to my mom. She would have like, no.
Like, he really is over here breaking generational trauma.
And like, I respect him for it, because I feel like we all, again, we have said that at one point, that like, why us? And I respect him for it. And I'm so happy that he didn't have to go through that experience of like having to translate stuff, really hard stuff. And yeah, like you said, he's like breaking generational trauma. He's speaking now. He's like, we're not always going to be here.
Yeah, he spoke up for the both of us. Like, I would have never said that to my parents. I would think it, and I would like, internally like be feeling it and all those emotions. But like he just straight out said like, well, they're not always going to be there. Like you can't rely on them forever. And I was like,
Mind
damn.
you, he's like 10 years old.
Yeah, I was like shook. I was like, what? Okay.
That's another thing my brother mentioned to my parents. He was like, how did y'all do it before us? Because like, my dad's been living here for years. And I don't know if my mom and dad were able to answer that. I mean, I guess they always had like, someone who like kind of spoke Spanish and all that. But I guess like we're obviously like who else than us?
Yeah. Stuck it out.
But like also, like my parents, they try really hard to speak, to learn English. But English is so hard to learn.
No, yeah, like my dad, he knows a couple of like phrases now. He can get along. Like he can have a conversation with his bosses and it's fine. It's just like sometimes they forget that we're just kids.
Mm-hmm. I know I talked about how like they try their best, right? But are there resources offered to them to help them learn English? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they're trying their best, but also how much best can they do if the resources aren't provided to them? That's another issue I feel like that comes into the conversation. There's not a lot of resources to help them learn English that are readily available to them, that are flexible with the time they have, like with work and being
Transportation.
Exactly. That's another topic that
Because Duolingo does not cut it.
Duolingo does not cut it, y'all.
My mom's been doing that for a long time, y'all. And she needs more than just Duolingo. But yeah, that's so true, Pamela. That's another issue.
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, who's failing us?
Who really is failing us then?
But I feel like things have gotten a little better. Like now, me and my brother are more busy and all that. So we're always there, like to go to like my dad's clinic appointments and all that. But like, they're like, come with us just in case. I was like, okay, I'll try. But sometimes I can't go. But I feel like getting a translator now, at least for like medical stuff, is a bit easier than it was back then. At least from my experience.
It is a little bit easier, but I still feel like it could
get
get better. I remember my dad went to an appointment just recently, and we did the appointment online, and it asked, oh, do you need an interpreter? We put yes, obviously. Alma still went, though, just in case.
Right.
And good thing she did, because the interpreter was not there. And so it's like, you would think that facilities of this high magnitude would be able to provide that resource and would stick it out with your request, but sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Or when your interpreter's on screen.
Or when your interpreter is on screen.
Right.
And then the Wi-Fi doesn't work, so it's like breaking.
Yeah, it's lagging.
Yeah, you're like, oh, hold on.
And like a thing I've noticed a lot is like the interpreters usually like, I guess they're like have back-to-back appointments and they sometimes show up late. I remember this one time, one of them was like, oh, I got a court meeting right after this, so I gotta leave.
You gotta go.
I also think that, like having like that big responsibility, now I'm like, as I'm getting more into like the professional world, now I'm like, well, I'm not going to translate or interpret unless I get paid for it, unless I get something for it, because I've done it for so many years and it's cost a little bit of trauma. So I don't want to do it unless I get paid for it. But then I also think back to my parents, and I'm like, oh, but like if I know Spanish, and why don't I just use it? Like why don't I just? So then you're stuck in that dilemma again.
I feel like it's nice, to help your parents and all that. Well, I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
No, yeah, but like you said, there are professionals who get certificates for this, and they get paid like good money. You've been doing this for a long time, and you have not gotten paid.
Imagine all the times you've interpreted. Am I using the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interpreted. Imagine if you gotten paid for all those times.
You could put like 14 plus years of interpreting on your resume.
You could retire.
I think I've actually heard that you can put that, maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, guys.
Look it up.
if you think about it, we have more experience than like the actual professional
And we have that cultural awareness.
That cultural awareness is a real thing. Like, I remember, I think it was like my mom went with like my cousin to interpret it so she could help her interpret something. And then like, I think my brother was there too, but he was off doing something else. And then he came back to help her interpret it. And then my mom was like, dang, like the way you interpret, he's talking to my brother. She was talking to my brother, was like, I'm used to it and I'm like familiar with it. And like the way you interpret it is like better for me. And maybe the way like my cousin interprets is better for like, your aunt and all that.
When you skip a few words in the translating process.
But it's okay because you got your point across.
You summarize.
I may be guilty of that. Especially when we get mail. I'm not going to read a bunch of those little words. I know even now as I'm older and, my parents, and they ask me to do stuff and I'm like, let's pull out Google Translate because I don't even want to give the brain power sometimes. Or like I have so much going on in my head because now I'm an adult and I have more responsibilities and I have school to think about and I have work to think about it. So everything is all mumble jumble up in here. And so I don't have any brain power and I'm just like, I don't know, Mom, let me go on Google Translate real quick and let me type this up and let me see. And it's kind of like an excuse not to do it. I don't know if you guys do that too.
Guilty.
I feel like for my parents, they're always kind of been like respectful about that. Like, oh, he has homework. Let him do homework.
Yeah.
But also like, it's not just interpreting for me. It's literally like tech support, making calls. What else? Yeah, like setting up TV, Wi-Fi, helping them with their phone.
Texting my dad's boss for him.
Sending messages.
You're so right. I have my dad's boss's number in my phone.
Sending addresses.
Email.
Sending a picture.
The picture.
Writing. I remember being so young and writing my own school notes. And then my mom just signs them off.
Yeah, I think we have a friend, he told us like his dad would make him like write out like actual like reports for like his job or something. And he's like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I'm like 10.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know, Luis. What do you think?
I think about it like more in the sense that like, I don't know, some people might, like some people think about it as like not wanting to translate or something. They might think about it as like, oh, está chiflado, ay, tu hijo, ¿cómo no te quiere traducir el niño? O sea, or, they might see us like you're being like mean or like you're trying to be like a brat or something by not wanting to translate. But, I think if we like looking at it a little bit bigger, we were talking about it a little bit not long ago, but like that, the point is that like these institutions or whatever, these organizations, these places should have people that are capable of translating, and the burden shouldn't fall on kids. Like obviously like, like more than happy to do it, you know what I mean? But like, there should be a professional though that should know, because
they should be qualified.
At the end of the day, like even the parents got to know, like you are just telling a little kid to tell you something. Like even if the kid spoke the same language, like even if like, let's say it was in Spanish, like little kids like tell you stuff, but like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes even kids can't interpret what they want to say all the way. So like, you're giving them a government document, like, you know what I mean? Like,
y luego te regañan por no saber.
Right. And so I can obviously see how like that can take a toll on like a kid. But I feel like now I feel like nowadays, like you were saying that we're adults and stuff like that. Like, I think my mom is pretty aware of that. And like how you had also mentioned about like, they're kind of like leaving me off it. Like, obviously, if it's a call, then I'm like, okay, I'm right there. It's funny. Like sometimes I'll be like, doing homework And as soon as I hear the phone, and as soon as I hear that, like obviously, like a lot of places say that they have translator help, like presione uno, presione dos, si quiere hablar con un en español or something like that. And then as soon as like obviously, but that stuff can take like a long time. You know what I mean? Like the wait is always super long. So then as soon as I hear that, my mom is gonna click on the English one, and as soon as I hear a man's voice, like someone's voice in English, I just run. I already know what's gonna happen. And again, that comes from like I know what to do, but if I was like, for kids, like I can see that, and then the point was that as we're getting older, I think my mom is becoming more aware of the fact that like my brother isn't like gonna be there all the time. I'm not gonna be there all the time. So like I feel like now she's actually like not too afraid to put herself in situations where she's surrounded by like white people, or like English only speakers. You know what I mean? And she low-key like learns a little bit more just by doing that. And I'm like, that's kind of how it was with us as kids. Like, you kind of get plopped into a classroom with like a bunch of English speakers, and you're a kid, but like so I guess I don't know. But it's kind of similar. It's like you kind of just figure it out.
You pick up the lingo,
You
the slang.
just pick it up, and so salute to her for putting herself in those situations. But it's always good to help.
So actually, guys, fun fact today, I was in my physiology class, right? And we were talking about speech and languages. And basically, this really stuck with me because I thought it was very cool, right? But again, don't quote me because I may not have remembered it correctly or detailed, but...
She wasn't paying attention.
I was even sitting in the front. But basically, they were talking about how like sometimes they do a lot of study with patients that have stroke, right? And they came to the conclusion that if you're bilingual, let's say, in this example, Spanish and English, and you get a stroke, most people will lose all of their speech ability and being able to communicate. It could take time for them to regain that. But if you're bilingual, your native language will stick with you. So for example, if you speak English and Spanish, but Spanish is your first language, you might not be able to speak English as much, but Spanish, you'll still be able to communicate and say those words in Spanish. And I just thought that was really cool, right? The bilingual, like when you're bilingual, they say it's a superpower, and I think it's kind of true in some cases. And I think it's
always true.
No, yeah, you're right.
Retweet.
No, and I thought that was so cool. And I was like, and the fact that we're talking and discussing like interpreting and translating, I just had to tell you guys. Mic drop.
You heard it here. Being bilingual is an asset. It is a superpower, and don't let anybody tell you differently.
It's a skill.
And that is a great segue into talking about positive experiences, because it's not all bad. There's a little a little positive here and there. Obviously, you are connected more to your roots. You learn the Spanish language more, especially if you're not, especially if you're in this country where Spanish isn't all around you always. But it is if you are having to speak Spanish and read Spanish and talk Spanish all the time, and listen to Spanish. And that reminds me how we took our AP Spanish class in high school, and how, we took that test, and we all aced it. So we all got Luis is side-eyeing.
I had a C+ in Spanish.
Okay, but you passed the
But
AP.
I passed the AP Spanish test with like a 4 or 5. I can't remember no more. But
Okay, then the way you just exposed yourself.
it was in a different time. This was before
Keeping it real.
This was before LLNW. This was before Mecha. So it was a different time. I didn't care about school back then. So
Oh, okay.
I do now.
Yeah, so we all took that test, and we all aced it, and so we all got 5s, and that transferred to college and whatever. And then it also gave us like the high school language credits, or I think those came from the
What's it called now?
I didn't take the AP Spanish test because I think they stopped that thing where they give you like college credit. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I did take the Avant test, which is similar in the fact that if you take the test and you ace it with like a 4 or a 5, you that covers your dual language classes for high school that are required for graduation. So I didn't have to take any second language classes, which was great because I had other stuff to do.
Nice. Isn't that also like the exit exam for a minor in Spanish?
Yeah, it's I know the professor required it, and then she's like, this will also be beneficial for you if you want to get a job, or like if they want to see like I guess your progress or like your education level. Granted, you have to pay out of pocket, but
You do.
it's really beneficial. And I think actually they still accept AP credits. I think it was just the school specifically that we went to that stopped providing AP Spanish, but I'm pretty sure they still count that as college credit.
Support your AP Spanish teachers and program, guys. Also, in relation to school, as I mentioned in the first episode, I'm trying to become a teacher, right? So right now my placement is at a dual language classroom. So it's a bilingual classroom, Spanish and English. Right now, in the younger grades, they start off with mostly in Spanish, then English, they lower. So right now in a K first, it's 90% Spanish, 10% English. And there's a whole bunch of mixed students there. There's those students who know Spanish already. It's their first language. And then there's those students who don't know any Spanish, and so English is their first language. And then there's those very special students whose first language is not Spanish or English. It's a completely different language, and now they're trilingual and they're only 6 years old. So that's amazing. And it just, I remember the first time walking into a dual language classroom, because pretty new here in locally. I remember being like, oh my God, if only I had walked in as a 6-year-old in a classroom where I could see labels that I knew how to read, or where I could talk to my teacher who shared the same language as me, or where I could have more than 2 friends because everybody else knows Spanish. So now that I'm in a dual language classroom as a teacher and not a student, huge supporter. I will argue with anybody. I will fight anybody if they're against it, because as we mentioned, being bilingual is an asset. It is a superpower, regardless, of who you are. Having 2 languages or more, having those different ways of communicating is amazing, and you help a lot of people, and more opportunities open your way, and you just get to meet other people too. That is such a positive, and I love that. And I love that these kids are going to grow up into being little superheroes who know 2 languages or more.
Adding on, you were talking about in a classroom, and I remember in my elementary school, we had one teacher, and she spoke Spanish, but she was like a 4th grade teacher, right? And so I ended up having a great connection with her because she spoke Spanish. That's her second language though, and she spoke Spanish, so she was able to communicate with my mom, and so that was a great communication factor. But then I don't know, she just became a friend to me, and we still connect to this day, right? And so you ended up having her, and so we were still very familiar with her, and I think that's teachers that can make a big difference as well. So I also support dual language programs.
It made having teachers that were able to speak Spanish. It made parent-teacher conference so easy.
You didn't have to be the interpreter.
But it was nice that my parents got to hear in their own language. I wasn't too bad of a student. The nice words they would say about me, not just coming from me, if that makes sense.
From the source.
From the source, yeah.
I remember that teacher also, she was my 4th grade teacher, and I remember it was also really nice hearing her say, reassure me, you do such an amazing job translating, and I feel like you're just amazing because you're able to do that for your parents. Not a lot of people get to do that, and I just want to reassure you that you're doing a good job, and don't be too hard on yourself, because at that time I was struggling with oh, like I don't like doing this. I'm like scared. I have anxiety, all this stuff. But she was a very great advocate and making me feel like I was seen. So teachers like that are great.
Shout out to that teacher. That's beautiful.
Miss Live,
Shout out to Miss Live.
love you, girl.
We love you. We love you. Impact. Luis, what's your positive
Like in school or just in general?
with interpreters and translators?
I mean, the thing I like obviously is like, having like older people, being like, hey, like thank you so much. Especially like in church or like in church events, like, me and my brother have had to translate for like the past 5 years out of like a few of them. And it's been from like translating maybe just for one person to like translating for like 300 people. And none of them speak any English and stuff like that. And then like, depending on who is speaking, like we have to translate the moment they're saying the sentence. And my brother's better at it than me, to be honest. But like developing that tool of translating literally on the spot of like, as soon as they're saying the sentence, like I'm already translating it.
That's a superpower.
Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm like, damn. But, again, depending on who's speaking, because sometimes they're wild and they're just going super fast and you're like I'm trying to like, I have to like focus completely. But, after all that's done, just getting people coming up to you and being like, oh, were you the translator? Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And getting all those compliments is nice. And it's a reminder of like, we have the ability, and if we can use it, then like it can be really good for people. You know what I mean? So, that's mine.
Have you guys had that where like you translate for an older individual and they hit you with the gracias, mija? Like that always hits hard.
That does.
Yeah,
Or
it's
gracias,
good.
mijo. Like I couldn't have done it without you. Like gracias.
Yeah.
It hits hard and it feels good.
My dad was like, we went to go pick up like his medicine. And my dad's like, hey, look, that guy needs help. And then I helped him. And then, I don't know, it just felt really nice to help. Because it's like, I know what they feel like, or at least secondhand. Because like I've been there with my parents.
Mm-hmm. Did we have to mature quickly? Sure. Did it give us social anxiety? Maybe.
Oh yeah, what you did, I don't know if I could do it with the church stuff.
I mean, it's like, it's just a skill. Like my brother did it first. So like, salute to him, to be honest, for starting that up. But then like, it's just like a matter of like practice, I would say. And then again, sometimes I still mess up. Sometimes you just gotta move on.
Yeah,
I ain't gonna lie to you guys. Sometimes there will be a sentence or two I'm not catching, and I'm like, I am not translating.
I know what that is.
Hardest thing to translate are whenever it's like a saying from like a place.
Oh, yeah.
Like.
Well, I mean, even those that are in Spanish and then trying to translate them back into English.
Vice versa, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. They won't get like.
It's like imagine translating camarón que solo me se lo lleva la corriente. You know what I mean? How shrimp that falls asleep.
You pull that out of nowhere.
Shrimp that falls asleep. The current sweeps
I was
them
gonna say
away.
something like Echamaguas, but damn, okay.
Sweeps them away. You know what I mean? So that part's hard, but it's practice.
And it's also like a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And it's a culture.
And we talked about like having a little bit of resentment towards your siblings who didn't have to do it a lot, towards your parents who made you do that, but like, who's it really to blame?
The system.
The institutions.
The institutions. Can you say it louder, Pamela?
The institutions, for those who didn't catch on.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. It just.
Not these ones.
It always.
Not LLW though.
It always comes down to like systemic issues.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
I remember like, I think you brought up like a situation or something like that. And it's like, someone said, oh, it's their job to know what to do in your situation. So for the systems, it's their job to have interpreters and to know how to like deal with people with different languages and all that.
And it makes one like a little bit angry because we haven't been the first. We haven't been the second.
We're generation.
And we probably won't be the last. So why do you continue to not provide what's necessary for the people that you're serving?
Like for people that think that it's not needed, it's like, dude, like the Latino population is growing exponentially in a lot of places, especially I mean where we live here in Vancouver. Like it's like, how is it not needed? It's
we're a country of immigrants.
It's, you know, important. It's like important to have these things, and if you don't think that it is so, it's probably because you might not even have ever experienced it or something like that. But like it's needed. It's needed in schools. It's needed in hospitals. It's needed in institutions like
DMV.
we're talking about the DMV. It's needed, and
Telemarketers.
and yeah, and it's needed in a lot of places. So you know, like for like to continue to ignore the problem and to just act like it's not even a problem. It's like you're just being ignorant, I guess.
It's like, why are you relying on a child? That says more about y'all than it does about the child and the family.
Yeah. Facts.
Let's think on that, guys. Let's think on that.
Yeah.
It's a moment of silence.
Sense.
But I think we should also appreciate the people that are trying to make a change. Shout out to Hilda, who started the Plaza program at Harney Elementary. She provides English classes, along with other teachers and administrators. She provides English classes to non-English speaking individuals. And she's also providing childcare for kids so that parents with children can come in and take those classes. And now she's starting a little preschool for those kids. She's going to start teaching them English as well. While their parents are learning, they'll be learning as well. And it's individuals like that we need more of, who are implementing that change. And just shout out to my girl, Hilda.
Shout out to interpreters and translators who don't only take those steps to learn the language, but also to know the people that they're working with and their culture.
Shout out to the parents too.
Shout out to the parents. Shout out to the children too.
We see you.
We hear you.
I mean, any advice or something?
Thug it out. Just kidding.
Sometimes, man, you gotta thug it out. I would personally say, you know, like, you know, for parents to like not put that, you know, don't be so hard on your kids, you know. No se la bañen con sus hijos, por favor, o sea, están chiquitos y también están aprendiendo el lenguaje y, o sea, quieren ayudarle, o sea, ellos les quieren ayudar y créanme que
es difícil.
O sea, no es fácil muchas veces, en especial, bueno, yo no crecí aquí, ¿verdad? Pero en especial no me puedo imaginar cómo un niño de 6 años se va a sentir, o de 7 o de 8. Pero para los papás, o sea, ténganles paciencia y o sea, ok, después de que les traduzcan, o sea, felicítenlos y, o sea, también, o sea, díganles que, hey, o sea, está bien, o sea, muchas gracias y aprecien eso, porque peligro y les toca un niño que no les va a querer o que les traduzca algo mal.
And you can also like seek out resources. You could, you know, what is something that is coming up for children to, you know, or for just anybody to go in?
Our awesome organization is actually is working on a event in which we will be featuring a documentary video called Translators. More details to come, but we really hope that like this shines light on what kids like us have gone through and our experiences.
Mm-hmm. It's in, if I'm correct, it's in partnership with Hispanic Chamber. right?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. So, you're not alone, right? Like we mentioned, like we just saw, like you just heard.
Heard and saw.
There's a lot of people out here with trauma, but it's okay because we're working through it. And at the end of the day, we're still superheroes.
And not that bad at Spanish.
Not that bad at Spanish.
And English.
That's true. Those skills.
Mm-hmm.
Intense moments
And
that led to growth.
Yep.
I think that will be all for the second episode of Charlitas. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
stay tuned.
Love you guys.